Republican senator to help save democracy. How is democracy in peril? It's in peril because of 369 pieces of legislation in various state legislatures at the moment, Republican-controlled state legislatures, that have provisions that will significantly restrict the access to voting, that will make democracy in the United States more of a managed democracy, where Republicans are managing election outcomes, where one party can control who wins because they have not been restrained by any principle or devotion to the interests of the nation, as well as the district and the party they represent. They only represent a political party now. They don't even really represent their constituents, because it has bipartisan support at a voter level to have elections with integrity. So Republicans are promising their voters integrity, but they're promising to correct a problem that Donald Trump made up. So if you're taking action to correct a made-up problem, and that action turns out to be facilitating overturning the election results, so allowing judges to overturn election results without evidence, allowing Republican officials to overturn state results that even Republican supervisors have said are straightforward and legal and everything good, everything that you need for an election, if that can still be overturned. It's kind of a little bit like the Electoral College system, but much worse. So the Electoral College system overturns the result of the popular vote. That's legal in the United States. That's a particular spin on democracy that has already acted as a corrupting influence within American politics. That's already the corrupting influence on American politics that put Donald Trump in power, even though he lost the popular vote in 2016 by 2.8 million votes. And then he lost the popular vote again in 2020. But that time he also he also lost the Electoral College vote, because by then decent Americans had awoken from the complacency that they may have been experiencing in 2016, when they underestimated exactly how dangerous and self-serving Donald Trump is, and how dangerous and self-serving people close to him are as well. So potentially more Republicans are understanding that. Do you know what the present moment calls for? It calls for our ability to just believe that there are moderate Republicans in existence. Marsha says, hi, Davina. This makes me sick. It's not democracy. Kim's here and says, hi, Dav. Hi, Kim. And Knowledge El Shabazz is here saying hi from Lynchburg City. So, yes, the Electoral College isn't great. But, you know, when it's worse, the Electoral College is worse when people aren't aware that there's this corrupting factor in American political life that was born of a compromise made to wealthy slave owners in order to bring them on board with the founding of the United States as a separate entity from British rule. So Marsha says we can't seem to rely on moderate Republicans. I would agree. Even Liz Cheney, who at least was public with her opposition to Trump's big lie, when it seemed as if every single Republican voice was going to be subsumed into presenting a unified front to present this lie to those with an appetite for believing the lies amongst conservative Republican voters. She at least was a sore point in their side. She was an outlier whose very speech created dissension, drew attention to the fact that it wasn't a unified front all saying, yes, the election was stolen from Trump, and we're just here to protect democracy by being honest about that injustice. It meant that Americans at least had the opportunity to hear from someone on their own team, if they were Republicans, the idea that it's not uncontested that Trump had anything stolen from him. Liz Cheney concedes that the election was perfectly legal and perfectly fair. And that it's a dangerous lie that has led to people's death in terms of the culmination of people's anger, the people that were told that something was stolen from them, that their votes had been stolen, that their legitimately elected candidate had his second term stolen from him. So they advanced a pathway to stealing from the rest of the United States, stealing the political and social stability that should have arisen when Biden legitimately won the election, and giving Republicans an excuse to try to manage American democracy in their own favor, to try to pervert American democracy in their own favor. Oh, Kimchi says, thanks for the award to Marsha. Thanks, Marsha, who just awarded us a great discussion award. Thanks, darling. So one thing I've seen today, I'm hoping to be able to share it with you, is a video made by, I think, an author by the name of Don Winslow. Now, Don is not afraid to take off his gloves in the fight for democracy and freedom and harmony in the US, which is why he blocked me, because he used to follow me and I was annoying to him in that he used Kellyanne Conway's daughter and her confession that her mother physically abused her, and he used that in an ad, and I begged him to take it down because I had a profusion of parental concern to say don't use a 15-year-old girl and her sort of social media not private breakdowns, but her sort of moment of emotional breakdown, begging people on the internet who she felt were her friends for help. Don't use that in a political ad. And he was like, no, it's very important because we have to defeat Trump. And I said, please don't. I think it's the wrong thing. He blocked me. He was right to do so. It was the only way to get me to shut up. Perhaps I was overfull of my own self-importance in that instance, advocating for principle. So yeah, do I regret doing that? Yes, I guess I do. But I at least know that I acted on principle, and that principle still holds for me, that I don't think it's a good idea to use 15-year-olds' personal breakdowns as political ads, even if it does show up one of Donald Trump's senior advisors in a very bad light as a parent and as a human being. Yes, he blocked me. Peter's here. Hi, Peter. Oh my gosh. I have somebody who just comes in and blocks my commenters. So I can globally unhide comment and then present on screen. It's really hard. Yes, it's an old video, the video about Kellyanne Conway's daughter. But the latest video Don's made, I don't know how I can even still see it on Twitter, to be frank, even though he's blocked me. It's a video about Kyrsten Sinema. And he made it after Kyrsten failed to turn up to vote with her fellow Senate Democrats for an insurrection investigation into the events of January the 6th, and also the planning and preparation and organization of that attack on American democracy and the attack on the American Capitol. So I've heard Kyrsten Sinema say that she had personal business that day. So Don Winslow evidently doesn't find that excuse acceptable. Merely Kyrsten Sinema's absence. Just be careful when you're running, guys. Homeschooling. This is why I'm broadcasting so late. My apologies. They have classes and tasks in the morning. It's really hard for me, actually, because I get frustrated that I want to help them finish. My daughter had a task today where she had to try and include some dialogue in a story she was writing. So it could have been anything, just one character saying something. She made a character say, ah, and she filled an A4 size page with the word and doing a lot of H's. And I was like, please do something other than that. Only, you know what? She's got a sense of humor and a strong will. So I had to end up letting her fill a whole page with H's until we could move on and include some dialogue that wasn't just a sound. Peter's asking me how I am. I would say a little bit stressed, but feeling very full of love for life, my beautiful children, my lovely husband and supportive husband, and a little bit afraid for American democracy, a little bit afraid that Senator Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are going to block things, because Manchin has written an op-ed that he's going to block the For the People Act in the Senate, the passage of that act. Well, he's not going to vote for it. And they need not only his vote, they need his support to suspend this filibuster for at least that rule to protect voting rights. And that is the core of protecting democracy at this point from the attempted overthrow of democracy from Republicans. An overthrow that they try to be subtle about, but they have a cover story to pursue this attempted overthrow of democracy. And their cover story is, well, Donald Trump said the election was stolen, and our voters believe that. So we want to reassure them by making sure we only get quality votes, by making sure only really committed people can vote. You can't just turn up and vote. It's got to be challenging. We've got to make sure, that we don't have those type of people who don't have a birth certificate, say, or funds to pay for a new birth certificate because, say, they were born in a time when segregation kept their mother out of a hospital, i.e. keeping elderly Black Americans away from the ballot box, elderly, relatively poor Black Americans, because it's a deterrent to vote. If they say already the types of ID you have are insufficient, you can only have these birth certificates that elderly white people got, because elderly white people were always allowed into the hospitals, whereas Black people in previous decades were sometimes and were often refused access to hospital births. So yes, there's lots of reasons that Joe Manchin could use to understand why it is a Democratic priority to pass the Send One bill, the For the People Act, and have some federal protections for voting rights. So I am worried about it. I am worried that the country I'm moving to and bringing my children to has a democracy that I had thought had made it through the woods, because Joe Biden was elected president, and a Black man and a Jewish man won their Senate seats in Georgia. And I was proud, and I was happy, and I was joyful. And I know you can never get complacent and say all the problems are solved. And I was prepared to keep broadcasting and keep being active. So today I'm still asking that. I'm still here being politically active and asking people to do what they can to spread the word about the necessity of motivating Manchin and motivating Lisa Murkowski, because she's close to Joe Manchin and they appear to be working in lockstep with each other. They've said that they want to pass a smaller, less ambitious voting rights protection bill, a John Lewis Voting Rights Act that wouldn't safeguard against all of the things that Republicans are trying to do to make it more difficult for Democratic voters to vote, making it more difficult for the people who would vote for their opponents to access the ballot box. I'm worried about it, and I'm worried that it's really hard, and that Joe Manchin seems to believe there's political capital for him in contrarian politics, that he will appeal to the largely conservative inclined voters of West Virginia by showing that all the progressives and all the left really oppose what he's doing and have some very strong negative feelings towards him right now. Marsha said, Davina, we will keep working hard and you'll be very happy to live here. Your children will have so many options for their future. Yes. And my husband will have so many more options for his career. He's an ambitious man and a bright man. And look, he has an ambitious, bright wife too. And I hope to make something more of myself in the US, although I'm happy and proud that I've engaged in what I've done so far. 3 years of broadcasting to try and be a little resistance radio voice in the wilderness of the internet, helping people connect with each other and helping them connect with their own resolve to stand up and support what is best about their society, what is best about their system of government, what is best about their nation. Marsha said it's scary, but you will be successful here. Well, that does seem to be the lovely thing about American culture, that they are very open to people with fortitude and talent and a desire to give. So there's that. There's that openness, which has made America attractive over the recent decades, very attractive to migrants. More than decades, for hundreds of years, America has been attractive to migrants who want to improve their lives and exercise their creative talents and their entrepreneurial talents. Oh, hey, MD Hewitt's here from YouTube. Nice to see you. So what are ways we can motivate Manchin? Well, I found a story. I didn't have to dig anything up really. Twitter found it for me. It's being discussed by, I think, the LA Times today, about a conservative radio talk show host in Arizona who initially started out in support of the Arizona audit. There've already been 2 audits in Arizona that were commissioned by the Board of Supervisors in Maricopa County, which are largely Republican officials. And those audits found that everything was above board with the vote where Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election by a slim but very valid margin. And so now we are contending with the fact that Cyber Ninjas is a small, inexperienced firm full of conspiracy theorists who have posted to social media about their belief in Donald Trump crony lies about there being foreign influence on the Dominion electronic voting machines. And they've checked those ballots, or allegedly sought to check those ballots for bamboo fibers to indicate that the ballots had secretly been imported from an Asian country, or used other methods to advance their hypothesizing, their spurious hypothesizing that that Italy had done something to the ballots. It's all very exciting, but apparently it's driving a wedge between people in Arizona. Not just a wedge between Republicans and Democrats, but a wedge within the party itself, the Republican Party. So some moderate Republicans are being literally repelled by the shenanigans of the Trump-oriented auditors, who have made it fairly clear that they already have a manufactured outcome. They already have their findings. They're already predeterminedly going to say Trump should be president. There's something. None of what they say will be valid because the shenanigans have been so endemic to their activities that they've used blue pens on ballots that are already marked with blue pens, that they have left ballot machines, voting machines unsecure, that they've just contaminated the whole process. Knowledge is going to go. Thanks for dropping in, Knowledge. Have a great day. Hi, Mineral Man. Good morning to you too. Kimchi says, wish there were 100 more like me. You know what? There's a few people like me, and we will find them and we will amplify them, because there's a synergy of our collective power, isn't there? We are more than just ourselves when we're not shouting into the void, when we're talking to each other and we're talking about ways forward. So let's see now if I can bring up, I found a video of a woman who put Democratic politicians on notice to save democracy. But first, here is the man I was talking about. If you can see him, he's got big arms, lordy. Very big arms. His name is Mike Broomhead, a talk radio host in Phoenix. Two-time Trump voter, apparently, staunch conservative and one-time supporter of auditing the 2020 election in Maricopa County. Now, his radio show is a daily recitation of how the effort became a debacle. So let me scroll to the end of that story. He said, this is good stuff. The story says, bitter GOP infighting is hardly new in the state of Arizona. Party activists constantly clashed with the late Republican Senator John McCain for not being sufficiently conservative. To Broomhead, this radio talk show host I'm describing, the rift is resurfacing right at the worst time, right before the 2022 election, when Arizonans will vote in 6 statewide races, including for governor and US senator. That division is coming to a head right now, he told his audience, warning that the state parties' all-in support for the audit is leaving moderate Republicans and independents out of the fold. And if you don't get everybody on board, we are going to watch the Democrats win the majority of those 6 important races. As a Democrat supporter, hooray! And when I move to the US, I'll be able to say that I actually am a Democrat. Haha, that will be awesome. Actually, I better Google what I have to do to be able to legally vote. Because I have a visa, but that's not enough to vote. Probably have to live there for a while. Well, still, I can be a political supporter and I can be active politically until I make progress in my citizenship status. So, for state legislators in safe GOP districts, backing the recount, the audit, is good politics. A poll by Higher Ground, an Arizona consulting firm, found that more than 3/4 of Republicans support the audit. So winning over that base of voters ensures a primary victory and therefore effectively re-election. But that same poll found that 55% of Arizonans overall oppose the effort, which means it could drag down statewide and swing district candidates come November 2022. So that's the most important part, really. 55% of ordinary Arizonans don't support that audit. It's so sullied with scandal and preordained conclusions, etc. And do you know what? Some of that 55%, that's not just Democrats, that's the independents. And people habitually discount the role of independent voters in elections. They can swing to the Republican side, and they often do. Oh, see, sweetie, and he's got to do a task, and it'll distract him if you have the TV on, okay? He's got to do a task, and you know what? Yeah, but he has to stop now. He has to stop because he's got to do a task. And look, Daddy. Do you need some more water or anything?
To be fair, she was watching TV since lunch started.
I know, she had a big lunch. So yeah, why don't you go check what Daddy's just brought back from the shops? And son, sweetie. Oh,
You said you just call me son.
I called you son because I'm trying not to say your name on television. That's why I called you son. Oh, Kim has a great suggestion. She says, please give a reaction and share on your favorite sites. Yes, if you think I have anything to add to this dialogue, that the opinion of someone who's looking in from the outside, but soon will be looking in from the inside. If you want to see more of me or you want to support my work, sharing or signaling in some way that this has value, it's a great way to do it. So Yes, I was making the point that independents are 40% of the voting electorate. 40%. And I'll check that because I would like to be confident in my figures. Independent voters proportion of the US electorate. Okay, around a third of registered voters in the US, 34%, identifies independents, while 33% identifies Democrats and 29% identify as Republicans. Now, this was from October the 26th, 2020. So last year, October, which is before the insurrection. And some people did change party affiliation after the insurrection. Some people who were Republicans changed to independents. Some went all the way to changing their party affiliation to Democrats. But I'm sure it was probably mostly just that one step on the continuum away from being a Republican to an independent if you were repulsed by the violence that was the product of Trump's constant incitement to violence and constant use of deceit to incite rage, to create a fabricated sense of injustice, to falsify a stolen election in order to create energy towards restoring him to his rightfully earned position in the Oval Office. So I hope that was a good story for you about 55% of Arizonans opposing the audit from the cyber ninjas in Arizona. As the recount drags on, some Arizona Republicans are losing patience. The Maricopa County Board, which had long opposed the recount, has ratcheted up its pushback with uncommon vehemence. Former GOP Governor Jan Brewer said auditors should call it quits. And when he was speaking on an interview on the Gaydos and Chad show, which are on FM in Phoenix as well, and 2 GOP state senators have signaled varying degrees of discomfort with the proceedings. So it's a drama that apparently is going to dominate Arizona's political landscape for some time. But more broadly, it's a microcosm that indicates schism between Republicans who are willing to accept Trump's lie and therefore accept that action is necessary to remedy that fabricated problem of theft, and Republicans who say we don't buy that lie. And this is not a small difference of opinion. This is a difference of opinion that might make them question their entire loyalty to the Republican Party. And also, it might be a deterrent from voting for Republicans who do believe the lie, but who then also believe that what's the point of voting because bamboo-eating pandas in Asia are going to send over ballots for the Democratic candidates, so why should I bother? The results in the New Mexico special election recently to fill Dev Havlin's district seat, occasioned by the fact that she was elevated to the position of Secretary of the Interior by the Biden administration, that had a candidate just win office, a Democratic candidate with a nearly 25-point margin of victory over her Republican opponent. And the good thing about that is that nearly 25-point victory is higher than the 23% margin of victory that Biden had over Trump in that district, and it's higher than the 16-point lead and the 20-point lead that that Deb had in 2016 and 2018 and 2020. The fact that you have to be re-elected every 2 years means, yes, representatives are perpetually campaigning, and that American politics is very consuming. The art of ingratiating yourself to the public is a very consuming art, but the shortcut to that is having principles. So people who communicate that they have simple, clear, reliable principles is really important. I need to look up the name of the Democratic person who won New Mexico. My favorite journalist on Washington Post has said that candidate has really laid out a blueprint for Democrats, because she didn't ignore Republican lies. She confronted it. She was positive about what she did believe in. Republicans paid for television ads falsely asserting that she wanted to defund the police. So her ads pushed back strongly, and in a way that we have to get comfortable with, because Republican intransigence, Republican sedition flourishes in darkness and when it's ignored. There's all these people on Twitter who will always say, why mention Trump's name? You're giving him attention and you're feeding the beast, blah, blah, blah. He's a product of media attention. He's not. He's not just a product of media attention. A reality TV show was the founding attention that helped cement him into a section of the public's consciousness as a success, as a business success story. But his foundational skill is that of validating the concerns and the worldview and the aspirations of race supremacist America. And there's a particular color associated with that, but I'm using the term race supremacist today because I'm sick of having to say white all the time. I think there may be a benefit to saying race supremacism. Maybe it's not the best choice, because maybe it opens up opportunities for people to complain that there are such things as black supremacists. But I'm not really afraid of that, because it seems laughable to me, and I'm guessing to many people, to claim that the activists who fight for justice under the law, the people who fight for an equal share of government services, equal share and attention from people in power, they're not advocating for supremacy, they're advocating for justice and equal access to opportunity. So, So race supremacism is what gives Donald Trump a political edge. It's not just attention, and his influence is still there. The Pandora's box he opened within the Republican Party is still active. It hasn't been closed just because he lost the election. He's lost some potency, absolutely, because his success escalated on the back of the transgressive power of defying people's expectations. So a lot of people who hopped on board with Trump after he won did so because they were so excited to defy people's expectations. Yep, we're on Trump's side because you thought he would lose and you were wrong. And people enjoy being part of a pile-on group of telling other people that they're wrong. That's one element of human nature, enjoying being right by seizing on data points that seem to indicate you are right and they are wrong. I remember being taunted by a former friend after Trump won, and I was very upset. And he was like, haha, your tears are delicious. And that's how maybe we could have understood it originally, when people were so upset and saying, why did this happen? Are my friends and family really racist? Yes, if they're not actively racist, they're certainly prepared to tolerate a lot of racism or ignore the strong presence of racism. But also they are addicted to transgression. They are addicted to the schadenfreude of of delighting in other people's distress and other people's violated expectations. So Kim is pointing out the problem with using the term race supremacist. He's saying race is not an anthropologically useful or accurate term. Yes, because what I want to say when I say race supremacist is I want to communicate that they're using a made-up and arbitrary paradigm to argue that some humans are superior to others. So you're right in raising that point, because I don't want to inadvertently validate that style of thinking. So I'll write it down and go back to the drawing board. Maybe I'll just still have to keep saying white supremacists. I just don't like it, because I feel as if saying the phrase white supremacy over and over again is making it sound as if I believe that white people are superior or supreme to others, and I don't. Yes. So there's that. I do like the sentence. An increasingly vocal share of Arizona Republicans see the recount as an act of self-sabotage, creating an albatross for statewide candidates in the run-up to a pivotal election year. It is going to be pivotal, and it's hopefully going to be a big voter turnout motivator that Republicans are so evidently trying to make it more difficult for Democratic voters to vote. They know that shrinking the electorate in general will privilege those people who turn out because there's an intensity to their commitment to vote for Republican candidates, because Republicans use emotionally manipulative arguments. They say your life is in danger from crime, and Democrats are facilitators of crime. They'll say your life is in danger from caravans of migrants, and Democrats are facilitators of migration. So if you don't get out and vote, you're letting Democrats destroy your life, and your wife be raped and your house be robbed. That's the degree to which Republicans have specialized in emotional manipulation of voters. Now, the Democrats have had a more honest approach of trying to say, we stand on our record and our policies will benefit people. And that's nice and good. And I appreciate that there's some honesty to substantiate that, as well as people like Joe Manchin, who just also appeal to contrarian politicking of saying, vote for me, I'm anti-establishment, and I'll keep those Republicans in check, and I'll keep those Democrats in check, because he's not much of a Democrat, is he? Although if you go to his Twitter page, as I do frequently, to see what people are saying to complain to him and to urge him to do better, or to post my own tweets saying, please, to Manchin, stand up for democracy and don't be an obstacle to safeguarding the rights of American citizens to be able to participate in the election of people who will lead them. Don't cut people off. Don't passively be involved in allowing it to happen, and don't actively write op-eds to highlight the need to preserve the filibuster, an antiquated Senate procedure, which doesn't even date back all the way to the Constitution, but dates back to the need to make an antebellum compromise. Antebellum meaning before. Ante means before, bellum, what does it mean? Is it the beautiful era? Antebellum meaning. It means, before the war. Oh, yes, bellicose means warlike. Antebellum means before the war. I won't forget that again. But in this case, it means before the US Civil War. So it means the slavery, the slave era, the era of enslavement. Thank you for thinking about it. Kim's thought of her own terms. unless you've read it somewhere as well. Skin premicist versus skin supremacist. Oh, I could do that. Maybe. It does sound a little bit creepy. Skin color supremacist. Pale supremacist. Arbitrary skin color supremacist. Having the word arbitrary in there would be quite nice to indicate that it is a made up hierarchy for ordering worth. Kim did just make it up. That's great, Kim. All right. Chuck Schumer intends to bring the filibuster showdown to a head next week by forcing votes on a series of measures Republicans oppose, including one blocked by a GOP filibuster in 2014 that seeks to ensure women and men receive the same pay for equal work. I guess so they're going to make it really obvious exactly how much stuff Joe Manchin is obstructing through his reluctance to give up the filibuster. People speculate about whether or not Joe Manchin is owned, whether his ass is bought by Koch billions, but we don't know. He does seem very heavily invested in protecting the status quo. When he says, I need to protect the filibuster, there's no argument that holds water to say the filibuster is a key part of preserving democracy, because it doesn't. People lie about it and say, oh, the filibuster slows things down so that there's no abrupt lurches when a presidency changes, when one president leaves and a new president begins, and new senators are elected. It doesn't prevent lurching, it prevents action. And the reason why it doesn't prevent lurching is because things change, and that's part of why you have elections, for things to change. So obstructing that consequence is just sabotaging the will of the voting electorate. And whilst the electorate isn't always well informed, the principle of democracy is that a majority of any given nation are likely to be able to sniff out con artists and corrupt people. That's the idea. And so you let democracy have its various pillars. You let it have media that's not owned by just one source. So you have a diverse media so that people can form their opinions by availing themselves of different points of view and different sources of information. So you have a healthy citizenry that's not so discouraged or lacking in patience or poisoned against the idea of institutions themselves that they choose not to participate in democracy. And you have to have access to the vote and votes being counted, and a judicial system that supports that. I do want to say the judicial system held out for America in its key struggle with authoritarian rule in 2020 after Donald Trump lost, and 62 court cases were found in Joe Biden's favor that Donald Trump did not, and his collaborators did not have any evidence of a stolen election. Kevin Hewitt says he has shown his cards the way he clearly protects Republican interests. That does appear to be the case, although Joe Manchin's interests align with protecting GOP interests, because that way, even though he's a Democrat, he can still appeal to a conservative-minded electorate by saying he's a key inclusion in the Senate to moderate the influence of Democrats. He positions himself as being very powerful. So maybe West Virginian voters feel like they're winning more than they're losing by continuing to vote for Joe Manchin in the Senate. And that's potentially the approach he's trying to play into, to say, keep voting for me. I'm not just going to let Democrats have power. Christopher Lucas says, can he not be removed from his seat by Democrats for his lack of his lack of effort to support the interests of Democrats? Elections are the things that typically remove senators unless there's a crime, I guess. The idea of an election is you elect people and that they stay in office unless they've done something so egregious that they have to be taken away and locked up in jail. But that's just my speculation around that. I don't know what's stopping Chuck Schumer from removing him, but I would imagine they would be safeguards, so you can't just remove elected officials from their position unless there's some imminent likelihood of arrest or something like that. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit sleepy, which is the wrong time of day to feel sleepy. I probably need a coffee. All right. Someone else says, it sounds to a lady by the name of Purna Jagadish. She's a writer for Data Progress, which in itself is it must be pretty left because she previously supported Ed Markey and Senator Warren. And Ed Markey is the senator with the most left voting record, and second most left voting record is actually Kamala Harris, and she is in charge now of the fight to protect voting rights. So Biden is making more noises that he understands this is an important fight and that he's using his number two in command to be in charge of fighting to protect American democracy, fighting to spearhead a federal response to what is happening at state level with Republicans, state senators and state representatives overthrowing democracy through putting access to the vote in jeopardy for so many American voters, but particularly more predominantly if those voters are people of color and therefore more likely to be predictably Democratic voters. Otherwise, it's hard to tell who do you stop from voting. Just do you stop people from voting if they live in certain districts? It just makes it easier if you research the voting habits of Black people and the voting ID tendencies of Black people, and then say, yep, if you don't have hospital issued birth certificate, then yep, sucks to be you. Either pay a whole heap of money or just, forego voting. Just that push to make it out of reach for people. That effort to deter people from voting. Okay, now there is a lady who made a video about this, and she was quite passionate. So look, here she is. Now, I'll play her because she's very feisty. This is 1 minute and 24 seconds long. Tell me if there's any problem with the sound and I'll try to fix it.
The Republicans are playing for keeps. They're planning to steal it all from us, and Democrats are acting like this is business as usual. This isn't knife to a gunfight type of stuff. This is following the candy trail up to the gallows and letting them put the noose around your neck. They are playing to the death, democracy's death. The new face of their party is a child sex trafficker and a white supremacist. The leader of their party is a lifelong criminal mob boss in social media exile in Florida, and people believe him over you. You're doing something wrong. Stop pretending this is normal. You aren't fighting fire with fire, and you're going to lose the country for all of us. They would have taken Biden's win from him, disenfranchised us, and blown up democracy on January 6th if it had just gone their way. And they're setting it up so they never lose again. If your heart isn't in it, then get out of the way. Make room for those of us who refuse to willingly put our head through that noose. Because I, for one, refuse to live in some oligarchy with Kevin McCarthy and Ron DeSantis in charge just because you guys diddled around thinking you could have bipartisanship when the Republicans are systematically destroying democracy. Show them that there is no place in America for an insurgent authoritarian party of corruption and violence. Pass voter protection laws, hold criminals accountable, throw out indictments like goddamn Mardi Gras beads, and put all those domestic terrorists, insurrectionists, seditionists in jail. Stop playing games. This is war, and only one side can win. The Republicans.
Yeah, so she's powerful, isn't she? Let's find her name so that you guys can follow her yourselves if you want. Her name is, her Twitter account is I Am Politics Girl. She's got 58,000 followers. She is a political junkie who believes in truth, facts, and the American experiment. So the handle of her Twitter account is literally I, capital, am politics girl. I am politics girl. There you go. I can't follow her at the moment because I'm all out of Twitter passes to follow any more people. So, but I'll be aware of her. I am politics girl. I've never seen her before, but yes, she has convictions. It's a good shortcut to plain talk, isn't it? Or straight talk. She says she does not want to live in an America where there is entrenched one party rule and Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell are unchallengeable at an electoral level because Democrats have no chance to win majorities anymore because the deck has been allowed to be so stacked against Democrats. So Republicans are stacking those decks in state after state after state. And everywhere where they use Trump's relatively unchallenged lies is where they squeeze through legislation that will hurt the ability of Democrats to have, you know, maybe this is also a function of the habitual under-recognition of the fact that black voters are the base of the spine of the Democratic Party. And my husband just stood up for me and asked the children to remember that Mummy's broadcasting. That's sweet. I got 9 more minutes, kitties, and then I'll stop. Love you, bye. So what's my point? Oh, yes, because I was arguing this in 2020, that Biden was the candidate that should be chosen in the Democratic primaries because black people supported him and black people comprise the pragmatic base of the Democratic Party. They're less likely to get carried away by imprudent communistic style theories where everything should be free. They understand white America very well because they're on the outside looking at white America and analyzing white America. So they don't forget the prejudices. They don't forget the animating principles of a lot of white Americans. They remember and they take that into account and they say, a respectable white man like Joe Biden, 8 years in the White House already, he's a candidate that is harder to effectively smear. He's a candidate that is a known quantity, and he's known for not being a communist. He's known for being a reliable, stable power in office. So to shy Republicans who want to reject Trump but don't want a communist like Bernie Sanders, a communist-leaning person like Bernie Sanders, a reasonably suspected communist-leaning person like Bernie Sanders. Biden is the ideal candidate, and they knew that. Biden won South Carolina because in Iowa and New Hampshire, there is not a large black population. So the large, cohesive voting bloc of black Democrats gave Joe Biden his victory in South Carolina, which then helped bring enough people on board to give him his Super Tuesday victory. And he then, his victory was assured in the Democratic primary race. Now, I've learned before that and from that and subsequent to that to listen to the voices of black political analysts, but also listen to the collective behavior of black voters. And I wasted a lot of my time just arguing with individuals that they should support Kamala Harris, that it was key to have a black woman on the ticket, and that Hillary Clinton's inadvertent error in neglecting to have a black person on the ticket meant that black Democratic turnout was not juiced in the same way it was juiced with enthusiasm when Barack Obama was on the Democratic ticket. She was more worried about placating white men who were repelled by the candidacy of a white woman, when really the thing she needed to sandbank was black turnout, because she still got black turnout, but she needed more black turnout. It fell from 66% under Obama to 59% for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Exactly. Whip Clyburn made the South Carolina victory happen for Joe Biden. He endorsed Biden at a critical convention, and he endorsed him powerfully by mentioning his wife and his wife's respect for Joe Biden. Whip Clyburn also told Joe Biden to make sure he mentioned his commitment to putting a black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. Biden had forgotten to include it in an earlier part of his speech, and Whip Clyburn approached him and said, "Do not leave that out. That is key to getting an enthusiastic endorsement from the voters of South Carolina." Black women have increased their proportional turnout. There are more and more black women voting in these elections because they understand what's at stake. They knew even before the pandemic, they understood Joe Biden was a necessary candidate to evict Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump represented an existential threat of white supremacist politicking that would, over time, defund and endanger their families. And it has, and it did. Trump's failure to protect the American public from the hazards of an unfolding pandemic put black families in harm's way, disproportionately more so even than white families, because there were more black families employed in frontline roles, in essential services roles, as home care helpers, as professionals who worked in essential services, and people of color were disproportionately harmed. It was a soft genocide against people who've historically had less access to quality healthcare in the United States. So people disproportionately died of color. And to me, it just all speaks to listening to black women as to how to best proceed now to protect democracy. So Stacey Abrams, since she lost the governorship race to Brian Kemp, who was Secretary of State of Georgia at the time and was running the election, ran an election in which he was also running as a candidate. And surprise, surprise, he won after there were multiple difficulties with the voting machines, not having extension cords, not being able to be plugged in the morning, so that black voters who'd woken up early to try and vote had to be turned away and could only vote later, meaning they probably couldn't get, or they couldn't easily get time off work, meaning there was a poll tax barrier put in of time and energy, and that the queues in black dominant districts meant more black people were likely to have to turn away from their intentions to vote. So yes, Brian Kemp won the governorship of Georgia, and Stacey Abrams turned her energy into registering voters and running a campaign and an action campaign called Fair Fight Action. So please look up Fair Fight Action. I'll bring it on screen another day, and we can see, because there are ways that people are trying to take action in this moment. There's no obvious election to campaign for right now, but we can still run a campaign to counteract Republican voter suppression measures, to counteract Republican democracy eroding measures. We can run voter registration campaigns, and the visibility of our efforts will contribute to community awareness of the dangers faced by democracy. Someone who worked as a congressional aide said he was asked, "What changed your mind? Did you ever have your mind changed by activists?" And he said he did once, or at least he was impressed by the resolve of some activists who turned up and played the drums in their opposition to a particular trade deal. And it just changed his mind in that it helped him realize the strength of sentiment, the strength of thought and feeling in opposition to the trade deal. So we can show that in our everyday lives and in our willingness now to join organizations and workers and volunteer our time and our efforts to sandbag democracy, to turn out as many voters as possible to help people work through any obstacles there are to voting, to show that even now we are already making plans to vote and to help bring people to the polls and to help activate people who don't understand how critical it is for these midterms for Republicans to not have access to power when they have not backed away from their willingness to benefit from an insurrection. They have not backed away from their intent to throw out election results that displease them personally. Kim says Stacey Abrams is the reincarnation of the mother of all, DNA Eve. Prove me wrong. Great point. I've been chatting for an hour, so I will say thank you so much to those who have joined with me today. Thank you, Kevin Hewitt. Marsha says it's so important that you speak about this because the more I hear about voter suppression, the more I just can't believe what goes on. Being in metropolitan New York, I never realized exactly what went on. Yes, so I guess having days where we talk about the history of it as well, or a history section, so that we know things, we familiarize ourselves with things like Black voters used to be presented with tests. So these tests included having to count all the bubbles on a bar of soap, having to recite passages from the Constitution, having to pass literacy tests, all sorts of hoops that Black voters were made to jump through, just in order to maximize a deterrent effect of saying it's going to be awkward and embarrassing, and you're going to feel that it's not just that you have to do these things, but white voters don't. And all of these impositions are what we are going to use to help ensure that you don't have political power, that you keep paying your taxes, but that we use all of that collected tax monies to benefit white recipients, white citizens, and your children can still go to badly run schools where there's poor services for heating the classrooms for your children and no buses to help bring your children to school, so that your children will expend a longer portion of their time just even getting to school. You won't have the political power to have people who will advocate for justice and for just outcomes in terms of service distribution. That you will languish and your communities will languish because we will potentially randomly kill some of the people who try to vote. There's been lots of different ways, and we can go through the chronology of that and what ways were used by white people who wanted to keep all the spoils of modern industry to themselves and wanted to have tax dollars collected from white taxpayers and brown taxpayers and black taxpayers, but they wanted to still be the dominant recipients of that taxpayer money, and that effect still operates in the United States, that tax dollars have gone to subsidize white dominant industries, mega agricultural businesses, rather than small farms, which are more likely to be, well, black farmers are more likely to have small holdings rather than mega holdings. And yes, so that's also, Kevin, you are both MD Hewitt and you are the Spoon Show account. Interesting. I was wondering if it was you, because I guess it's a coincidence that Hewitt appears in both MD Hewitt and Kevin Hewitt. So thank you for your interest in this broadcast, and thank you, Marsha and Kim and anybody else who's listened today. In the midterms, that Georgia level of turnout in the Black community needs to be maintained, but it needs to be now. Yes. I think there is a degree of awareness amongst some people about the peril that Republicans have placed democracy in, but it is imperative for us to do everything we can to be visible in our efforts to sandbag democracy and help stop Republicans from eroding the viability of democracy in the US, eroding the possibility that Democrats could ever have a candidate elected ever again, because Republicans are seeking to manage the outcome of elections through inappropriate means. And they're making it legal. They're making legal legislation that constrains access to the vote and thereby shrinks any potential electorate and excludes Black voters from it by making it more difficult for people in dominantly Black communities to be able to vote in a timely fashion. Marsha asks, Dav, when will you sing next? Oh, thank you for asking, Marsha. That means I will sing tomorrow and I will practice something today. I'm very glad you asked. There was a comment on my YouTube channel, which simulcasts these broadcasts, where someone said, oh, typical leftist propaganda, projection, slander, blah, blah, blah. But I enjoy listening to her speak because I enjoy listening to people I disagree with, and she's good looking, and I liked hearing her sing. And I was like, oh, what a lovely comment. So, yes, thank you so much, everyone, including that commentator who falsely slanders me as being leftagander. I have a very strong commitment to facts and to questioning myself and to including as much data as possible, as well as not being deterred from drawing big picture conclusions about the motivations of those Republican politicians who've supported an insurrection and supported Donald Trump, a self-serving, dangerous liar and thief and manipulator. Yeah, it's not projection. That's supported by the facts, supported by a lot of lawsuits that Donald Trump has lost and a lot of lawsuits that Donald Trump has been the target of because of his habitual ripping off of subcontractors as well as the American public since he brought to office. Christopher Lucas is also into the singing. Hooray, Christopher, I promise I'll sing tomorrow. You really want me to sing today? Aren't you guys sleepy? You must be sleepy. It's got to be the middle of the night for you. You want a lullaby? Okay. I'll do a lullaby from Jesus Christ Superstar, which might seem like an odd lullaby for a good Jewish girl to sing, but I'm not that good of a Jewish girl at all. Okay, it's called Everything's All Right. I need lyrics. Lyrics. Try not to get worried, try not to turn up to problems that upset you. Don't you know everything's all right, everything's fine. Want you to sleep well tonight. Let the world turn without you tonight. If we try, we'll get by, so all about us tonight. Yeah. Not you, mere for your hot forehead. Then you'll see everything's all right, everything's fine. And yeah, this one needs some practice. For the fire in your feet. Close your eyes and relax. Think of nothing tonight. You're fine. And this is Judas. It's safe for the poor. Why have to waste it? We could have saved maybe with silver pieces or more. People who are hungry, who are starving. Oh, this is a version I'm not familiar with. I know the one my husband showed me on the movie of Jesus Christ Superstar. Anyway, I thought that would be easier for me because I did used to sing it a little bit to my children to help them go to sleep when they were smaller. But yeah, so that will be a prelude. I'll try and practice that one a little bit. It's a bit high for me, but I'll see what happens. And then tomorrow you can get a full song. So that was an appetizer. Thank you so much. Once again, Kevin, Marsha, Christopher, Kim. Did I say Kim? Thanks, Christopher. Take care. Hopefully see you early tomorrow. Thanks, Marsha.